Hello students, this is Tulika Banerjee from Forensic Science Unit, SGTB Khalsa College, University of Delhi, presenting this module on behalf of Ritu Sharma, Assistant Professor, Sachi University of Buddhist Indic Studies, Bhopal. I am delighted to present this lecture on social institutions, which is taught in BA second semester. Before we start our chapter with the introduction of social institutions, let's look at the other modules we will study in this chapter. First is social institutions, need, meaning and definitions, characteristics of institutions, types and functions, and lastly the conclusion. Students, first we will see in brief why social institutions are needed or required to make sure that every member can support himself. Every society has some kind of economic institution to make sure that the young of each generation are taught what is important in their society. Every society makes provision for supplying an education through the educational institution. Similarly, every society provides for some kind of religious experience through its religious institution. Certain human functions are essential to the survival of the individual and the group. One essential function is control of the process of reproduction. A society must ensure a continuous supply of societal members and must provide these new members with a nurturing environment. Other essential functions include maintenance of law and order in society. All human societies have had to perform these functions to make sure that reproduction proceeds in an orderly fashion and that infants are well taken care of until they are able to be independent. Every society has some kind of family institution. Now, I will discuss the meaning of social institution as explained by sociologists. Meaning of institutions. According to famous sociologist Samuel Durkheim, sociology is the study of social institutions. Since societies have their existence on the basis of social institutions and complete the needs of individuals. Institutions organize the life and create continuity. There are many variations and revolutions in the society, and it is the durability of structure of social institutions and the functions of their continuity that keep it safe from damaging shocks. These institutions not only provide a strong structure but also keep the attachment of individuals by fulfilling their basic needs. Human beings are not only animals remaining dependent on the completion of biological needs, but also being social animals, they feel three kinds of needs to be fulfilled. First is the biogenic needs, that is hunger, thirst, sleep and sex desire. Second is the sociogenic needs, that is wealth, fame, honor and prestige. Third is the psychological needs, that is love, attention, belongingness and feelings. All of these need to make him turn towards attachment with institutions and give stability to the existence of institutions. In sociology, recognized usage and procedures are known as institutions. These come up as social expedients in the interest of harmony. They operate as the springs and shock absorbers in the social mechanism. It is the recognized and established rules, usage and traditions. They exist to discipline and control individual behavior. Institutions are the established ways of doing things. Institution is an abstract thing which refers to those rules and regulations, norms and values which come into being through social interaction and subsequently regulate the behavior pattern of the members of the society. The established ways of doing things not only bring unity among the members of the society, but also help the members to predict the behavior of others. Each institution has a member of folkways mores and laws which all members of society are expected to follow to make their life in society easy. These folkways, mores and laws vary from society to society because institutional forms themselves are different. All individuals follow these norms to some extent. If each individual lives in his own way and did only his own thing, we would soon face utter chaos. Without some means of steady support, parents might abandon their infants or let them die. For we cannot be sure that parental love is an instinct and is not rather a responsibility taught by the family institution. If there were no organized ways of obtaining a livelihood, competition and conflicts would be so fierce that many people would not survive. The law of the jungle would prevail if there were no institutions that maintained order. In other words, institutions enable societies to keep functioning. Institutions are the foundations or pillars of society. Institutions are also interdependent. The family institution supports the other institutions and is in turn supported by them. The condition of the economy in our society determines whether we can obtain a good job and establish our family. The government may decide whether we finish college or go into the armed services instead. It is important to remember that institutions are simply abstract concepts of organized habits and standardized ways of doing things. We cannot see institutions. What we can see are families, schools, banks, temples, hospitals, etc. But these would be nothing but empty symbols without one vital ingredient: individual. The behavior of individuals gives institutions their form and institutions give form to individual behavior. The concept of institution is an important one in the social sciences. Unfortunately, however, it has been used in different ways and its meaning has become ambiguous. Some writers use the term institutions when referring to large social groups, reserving the term associations for small groups. The distinction is then only one of size, but no one knows how large a group must be to become an institution. Furthermore, used in this way, the term adds little to our understanding of social structure. Some writers use institution for any constellation of cultural traits collected around some functions or set of functions. Thus, for example, we might refer to all customs associated with teaching the young as the institution of education, to those related to worship as the institution of religion, and to those related to ruling in all of its forms as government. According to McClever, an institution is a set of formal, regular and established procedures characteristic of a group or number of groups that perform a similar function within a society. In short, an institution is an organized way of doing something. Barnes defines social institution as the social structure and machinery through which human society organizes, directs and executes the multifarious activities required to satisfy human needs. The simple language, social institutions are the established ways through which the social interaction among the individuals are structured, regulated and controlled for the purpose of satisfying human needs. Sumner said, an institution consists of concept, idea, notion, doctrine, interest and a structure. He added, the structure is a framework or apparatus or perhaps only a number of functionaries said to cooperate in prescribed ways at a certain conjuncture. The structure holds the concept and furnishes instrumentalities for bringing it into the words of facts thoughts and action in a way to serve the interest of men in society. Then he points out that institutions begin in folkways, become custom and develop into modes by having attached to them a philosophy of welfare. They are then made more definite and specific with respect to the rules, prescribed acts and the apparatus to be used. In his discussion, Sumner implies that an institution has a degree of permanence. It should be added that it also is integrated with the other institutions of the society. Chapin has given a definition of an institution in terms of the cultural concept. A social institution is a functional configuration of culture patterns, including actions, ideas, attitudes, and cultural equipment, which possesses certain permanence and which is intended to satisfy felt social needs. These definitions show and explain that common values mean common views and aims. Common way of working means standard group behaviors and system of relative means, status and role status combination. Just as in the institution of family, there is a set of common values, that is love and mutual respect, etc. Common procedures, that is children care, routine works and network of roles and stabilities, that is father, mother, brother, sister, etc. It sets up social reaction system that fulfills the family life basic needs. Simple and complicated societies have fine important basic institutions, that is family, schools, religion, political institutions and social institutions. In addition to fulfill specific secondary needs, there are secondary institutions in the modern societies. For example, recreational institutions, welfare institutions, health institutions and industrial institutions. They are of formal nature and demand a modern life. Module 2, Characteristics of Institutions. We can understand the concept of social institution more precisely through its characteristics, which I will be discussing here. So first is cluster of social usage. Institutions are composed of customs, modes, rules organized into a functioning unit. An institution is an organization of rules and behavior and is manifested through social activity and its material products. In short, the institution functions as a unit in the cultural system viewed as a whole. Second is relative degree of permanence. Our beliefs and actions are not institutionalized until they are accepted by others over a period of time. Once these beliefs and behavior get recognition, they become the yardstick for evaluation of the beliefs and actions of others. In short, institutions have a degree of permanence. It does not, however, mean that they don't change. As new ways of doing things appear and are found workable, they challenge their stability and impel institutions towards the change. Thus, institutions function in accordance with cultural norms. However, in comparison with associations, they have the greater degree of permanence. Third is well-defined objectives. Institutions have fairly well-defined objectives which are in conformity with the cultural norms. The institution of marriage has the objective of regulating the network of social relationships and the members of the society would consciously work for the attainment of the objective. For example, marriage in the same caste or class. Objective has to be differentiated from different functions to which the members may be unaware. Of example, the function of marriage or gratification of sex urge and to have children. Fourth, cultural objects of utilitarian value. Cultural objects help in the attainment of institutional objectives. The cultural artifacts, beliefs and value system must help the institutions to attain their objectives. Cultural objects of utilitarian value, which are used to accomplish the purposes of the institution, are usually involved in buildings, tools, machinery, furniture and the like. Their forms and uses becomes institutionalized. For example, a weapon in our culture is shaped strictly in accordance with our ideas of efficiency, with few decorations, and those are dictated by the aesthetic considerations. But the weapons of the primitive are decorated with symbols which are supposed to ensure the help of powers in the effective use of weapon. Fifth are the symbols are a characteristic feature of institution. A symbol may be defined as anything which depicts something else. Symbols may be either material or non-material in form. The institutions can have permanency, identity and solidarity if they have some symbols. The members of that institution feel quite closer to each other by sharing the common symbols. Next is institution has a definite tradition. Each institution has a fairly definite tradition, oral or written. Such tradition refers to the purpose, attitude and the behavior of the members. The tradition attempts to bring together individuals into functioning whole through established behavior, common symbols and objectives. The traditions, when become rigid, take the shape of a ritual. Institutions are transmitters of the social heritage. Social institutions are the great conservers and transmitters of the social heritage. It is in the institutions that individual learns the basic values of the life. The child initially plays a role of general receptivity in the basic and multifunctional institution of the family, and in this way receives the largest share of the social heritage. In his initial helpless state, culture is passed on to him by his family. As he learns to adapt himself to the expectations of his parents and siblings, he acquires many of the important elements of culture, which his elders have learned the same way in their time. He learns what is expected of him during the different stages of his life in the family. In this way, he is a personal conservator of an important part of the social heritage. Other institutions play a more specialized role in the preservation of the social heritage. Next to the family, the school is the most important institutional mechanism engaged in preserving and handing on the knowledge, skills and techniques of the culture. If the field of sacred learning, the educational and transmissive function is performed by religious institution, the very life of the institution depends upon the continuity of the generations, with each slowly taking its responsible part and gradually handing its accumulated knowledge on the next. Institutions are resistant to social change. As patterned forms of behavior, social institutions are more resistant to social change than behavior where such uniformity and regularity do not apply. Institutional behavior is by definition the behavior invested with social sanctions and structure to carry out these sanctions. It is natural that behavior of this kind would be more resistant to social change than behavior that has neither sanctions nor structures. Social institutions are thus, by their very nature, conservative elements in the social structure. They tend to hold firmly to the patterned behavior of the past and to resist basic modifications therein. With the help of these descriptions of the features of institutions, we come to the conclusion that institutions are very essential for the purpose of having an established way of living and unity among the constituent members. Social institutions are the social patterns that establish the organized behavior of human beings in the performance of basic social functions. Classification of social institutions. Social institutions may be classified in several ways. Sumner has classified institutions into two main types. The first is recessive institutions such as property, marriage and religion, which originates from modes. These are unconscious in origin. The second is enacted institutions such as credit institutions, business institutions, which are consciously organized for definite purposes. Ballard has distinguished basic institutions from subsidiary institutions. The basic institutions are those which are regarded as being necessary for the maintenance of social order in a given society, that is, the family, the economic institutions, the religious institutions, the educational and the political institutions, and they are regarded as basic institutions. The subsidiary institutions are complexes of the type which are not regarded as quite so necessary for the maintenance of social order. For example, recreational ideals and activities belong to this class. Chapin has classified institutions with respect to their generality or restriction in the society in which they are found. The cultural elements involved in general institutions are usually universals, while those involved in restricted institutions are usually specialities. Religion as such is a general institution. Hinduism is a restricted institution. Ross mentions two types of institutions. The first is the operative institution and the second one is the regulative institutions. Let us look at these two institutions in brief. The operative institutions are those of which the main function is the organization of patterns whose practice is actively necessary for the attainment of the objective. Example, the institution of industrialism. The second, relative institutions are the organized for the control of customs and other types of behaviors which are not themselves parts of the regulative institution itself. The legal institution is an example of it. Functions of social institutions. There are various important functions of the institutions. Institutions have manifest functions which are easy to recognize as a part of the professed objectives of the institution, and latent functions which are unintended and may be unrecognized or, if recognized, regarded as byproducts, says Merton. The primary institutions function in manifest manner. The working is direct and clear. These, however, give rise to the secondary institutions. They function in latent manner. Institutions simplify action for the individual. An institution organizes many aspects of behavior into a unified pattern, thus making more or less automatic very complex and sometimes long continued segments of social behavior. The participant in an institution is accustomed to pass from one complicated set of behavior traits to another towards a recognized goal. One of the most highly integrated institutions in modern society is military establishment. The soldiers learn to pass in orderly fashion from one type of behavior to another without hesitation towards the objective of eliminating enemy. Second, institutions provide a means of social control. The institutions are the most important agencies through which the sanctions of the society are brought to bear on the individual. In other words, institutions play a central part in the process of social control. All major institutions, the family, the school, the religious institution, the state, inculcate basic values and definitions to the young one. Thus, most of the controls that deal with the basic concerns of life are transmitted through the social institutions. Institutions provide a role and status for individual. Some people serve in groups devoted to public welfare. Others find a place in business, in the professions, in public service or in the home. Some shine in sports, others in literature or art. The institutions to a degree provide for the individual the opportunity for the development of his peculiar characteristics and determine his role and status. Institutions provide order to the society. Besides helping individuals to satisfy their basic needs, institutions provide unity to the society. The law of the jungle would prevail if there were no institutions that maintained order. In other words, institutions enable societies to keep functioning. Institutions act as stimulant. The institutions may stimulate certain individuals to react against it and formulate new patterns of behavior. Sometimes individual feels the disharmony between the various institutions. He seeks some way out of the impasse. He must devise some way whereby his urges may be more fully satisfied. Hence, the institution functions in such cases to stimulate the individual to break new roads to freedom. Thus, institution provides the stimulus which starts a revolt against the established order. Institutions act as harmonizing agencies in the total cultural configuration. The institutions are not independent but are related to each other in a cultural system or configuration. Most of the institutions in the system tend to support one another and the configuration as a whole. Thus, courtship supports marriage, which in turn supports the family, all three institutions being mutually interdependent. Institutions display tension between stability and change. Workable ways of doing things, repeated over and over, tend to become rigid forms. This is why mere habits become institutions. Looked at from this point of view, institutions tend to maintain stability and the status quo. But as new ways of doing things appear and are found workable, they challenge the stability and impel institutions towards the change. Function of the institutions also changes since they are not static. Like any other part of culture, they change through time. Alteration in one institution invariably reverberate throughout the institutional structure of society. With changes is one set of norms bringing in them make changes in others. The expanding area of state activity, industrialization and the urbanization has squeezed the function of the primary institutions in certain respects, while the secondary institutions are on the expansion. Module 4, Conclusion. Dear students, on the basis of our today's discussion, it can be said that social institutions play a vital role in the economic development of a country. At the same time, in underdeveloped countries, there are certain social institutions which create obstacle in the path of economic growth. Thus, question cannot be ruled out that these institutions need radical change to promote economic growth. To bring change in social structure is an extremely difficult and long-term process, as any such effort is bound to be resisted by some reaction in the society. Any abrupt change in the socio-economic structure is fraught with dangerous consequences. It is always resisted by those whose social status is adversely affected by it. This does not mean that there should be no social change in a society. In fact, institutional change is a prerequisite for rapid economic growth. In a sense, all resistance and sacrifices involved should be considered as a cost of the development process. In India, various social institutions such as joint family system, caste system and law of inheritance, religious tendencies, child marriage and will system had influenced countries' economic development considerably. This has obstructed the rapid speed of development of modern technical knowledge. Students, this is the end of conclusion. In this module, we have recapitulated our views on social institutions. With this, our today's chapter on social institution comes to an end. Do keep in mind what we discussed today. I'll be back with one more lecture in this series. If you want to learn more and enhance your knowledge, you may log on to our website www.cec.nic.in for MCQ, quizzes, LORs, etc. Make sure you revise the modules frequently so that you master the topic well and take up the exercises. Thank you for your time today. I'll see you in the next lecture. Keep learning, work hard and do revise the chapter. Goodbye.